All right, good evening. It is Wednesday night and it's time for our Bible study. For those of you who've been joining us for the last few weeks, we're going to continue on with our series on the Jordan River Rules. It's based on a book by Robert Morgan. This week we're going to be looking at rule number 4. And once again, I'm grateful that Lance has joined us for this class this evening. And I'm certainly glad that you've joined us as well. So let's spend a little bit of time in singing and worship, and then we'll jump right into Joshua chapter 2.
I keep finding voices in my mind that say I'm not enough. Every single lie that tells me I will never measure up. Am I more than just the sum of every high and every low? Remind me once again just who I am, because I need to know. Oh, you say I am loved when I can't feel a thing. You say I am strong when I think I am weak. You say I am held when I am falling short, and when I don't belong, oh, you say I am yours, and I believe, oh, I believe, what you say of me, I believe. The only thing that matters now is everything you think of me. In you I find my worth, in you I find my identity. Oh, you say I am loved when I can't feel a thing. You say I am strong when I think I am weak. You say I am held when I am falling short, and when I don't belong, oh, you say I am yours, and I believe, oh, I believe, what you say of me, I believe. Taking all I have and now I'm laying it at your feet. You'll have every failure, God, you'll have every victory. Oh, you say I am loved when I can't feel a thing. You say I am strong when I think I am weak. You say I am held when I am falling short, and when I don't belong, oh, you say I am yours, and I believe, oh, I believe, what you say of me, I believe, oh, I believe. Just as I am without one plea, but that thy blood was shed for me, and that thou bidst me come to thee, O Lamb of God, I come, I come. Just as I am and waiting not
Okay.
All right,
We're
you
here.
Can see us. We
And
are
we're
here.
live.
We are live.
Yeah. Okay, so it's me. We weren't going to do this live. We are going to tape it, and then I was going to upload it. And so I'll still set it up as a premiere, but if you're watching this, it is 10 o'clock on Wednesday morning.
Yes.
But this is intended to air at 6 o'clock on Wednesday.
Yes. And one of the reasons we do that is because if there's any technical issues, we like to get them out of the way now. And so hopefully at 6 o'clock, you'll be able to see this without any issues. So.
Yeah, if Jamie were here, we would not have done this.
No.
I'm producing, and she normally does that during the week. Of course, we have Lee that does it Sunday mornings, and they do a great job. And I'm not as good as Lee, and I'm not as good as Jamie, but everybody knew that anyway.
And we could keep adding to that list of things, but we don't have that long. We'll still be going at 6.
All right, so I have a little game for you.
Okay.
I love doing
Hobbs.
these. Okay.
I know you do.
Name the person. Single mother, on welfare. Book was rejected by everybody. When a publisher finally agrees to publish it, they literally tell this person, don't quit your day job. Who is it?
I have no idea. I don't know too many. I'm going to say Sue Grafton.
J.K. Rowling.
Harry Potter. Yes, okay.
Yes.
That's my wife loves those books. So,
Yeah.
I should have known that, but I didn't
Okay.
because I haven't read them. Sorry.
Founded a small business called Trafo Data that was supposed to keep data about traffic. The early prototypes didn't work, and the company was quickly closed in kind of disgrace.
Is that the guy who later on? I can't even think it starts with a Z. Is he the one who ultimately started Facebook?
No, it is not Zuckerberg.
Yeah,
It is
Zuckerberg.
Bill Gates.
Okay, I was close. I mean, I knew well, of course,
Okay.
with the data one. Okay, I'm over.
Okay.
I'm gonna get this one out of the park. Then.
Applied to film school 3 different times. Denied admittance into the film schools that he wanted in. Wasn't even good enough to be a student at film school. He has since gone on to make a bazillion summer blockbuster films.
Okay, so I'm gonna guess, and this is probably not right, but I know a little bit of history about Star Wars and Harrison Ford.
Harrison Ford's an actor in it.
I know, but
Okay.
he wasn't originally chosen to be on. He was like
Yeah,
he was
but
just on the set, and then he like
it's a
read for
director.
somebody.
So,
okay.
So
He was a
I thought
director.
you were going to say Lucas.
Oh no,
But it's not George Lucas. But
Okay.
it is somebody who's worked with him.
Okay, well that doesn't help me because I don't know
Steven
anything.
Spielberg.
Oh wow, really?
Yeah, couldn't get into film school.
Okay, film school. I confuse
what I
that with
said.
acting. I know.
Yeah.
I film and I just immediately thought, okay, wow,
Okay.
I'm 0 for 3. It's getting worse.
Just every business he had was bankrupt, okay? He created a character, his most popular one. He lost the rights to it, bankruptcy again. Critics hated his early work and almost was bankrupt again.
He created a character everybody hated.
The critics did. Audiences
Critics.
did.
Oh man.
Who's in the business of creating characters?
I have no idea. This is not my world.
Walt Disney.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was thinking like in the last 20 years.
I thought these were really obvious and that you would get them all.
I don't know anything. I should have thought Mickey.
Okay.
Which Mickey is, honestly, it's a little creepy, little mouse, kind of squeaks around, and he didn't even talk when he first came out.
So our point of all of this is that you
Yes.
can get off to a really bad start
Yeah.
and have a beautiful life.
Yes.
All right. So do you want to introduce our character?
Okay, so I will introduce our character. We are in Joshua chapter 2. We're talking about, crossing over the Jordan. And this is going to happen ultimately, spoiler alert, with the rest of the Israelites. But for right now, it's just going to be 2 people. And they're going to cross over and they're going to find themselves, and we don't know how this happens, but they're going to find themselves hiding out at the house of an innkeeper, according to Hebrew, because the word is a little vague. But the Greek is not vague.
Yeah.
She's a prostitute.
Yeah.
And so there's where we start out.
There's where we start out. And so I looked this up, and Wikipedia actually has a page for, I'm going to clean up the word just a little bit. Prostitute with a heart of gold is a character trope that's in literature from Shakespeare, the current films, to the Bible. The list of examples is probably around 50. It's super long. And so this is a trope that has endured throughout most of written history of this prostitute with a heart of gold, that like there's something else to her, or there's a conversion or something. And so I want to ask you, why does this character trope endure for so long across so many works of literature?
Well, I personally think that the answer, unlike the other 4 questions that I struggled with, I think this answer is a little simpler, and it's multifaceted. But one of the reasons is I kind of think it's an eye poke to all those people who have felt marginalized. They've been pushed down, maybe because of choices that they didn't even make, or maybe because some of the past that was a result of their decisions. And all of a sudden they were in the second-class citizenry, or even pushed out, to the fringes. And all of a sudden to say, hey, we're not completely useless. We can still have, a heart of gold, or we can, still do good things and contribute. I think that's one of the reasons, and why it resonates with so many people is so many people that can say, I've been broken, but that doesn't mean that I'm broken forever.
And so you basically are arguing that we root for them because we identify.
Sure.
Okay. No, I agree with that.
And something else that you mentioned, you said there's, throughout history, there's 50 of them.
Oh, yeah.
But you said, but where did it start?
In the Bible is one of the earliest written examples of this trope, and that's one of the ones that we're going to be talking about.
Yeah. Their origin story goes back.
Yeah. And so I think promiscuity on the part of a woman seems unnatural. And sin is a very unnatural thing. It's Satan's twisting of something that's good and that's natural. And so I think that endures because it just doesn't seem natural, and so we can't look away from it. That like our mind is just attracted to it, of like we just intuitively know that it's wrong. And so I also think that it is a mirror back to us about how prostitutes don't pretend to be faithful and loyal, and yet oftentimes we as human beings do. And so our covert two-facedness kind of gets exposed by somebody who's just obviously selling it. And it's like, oh, well, I'm kind of guilty of the same thing as they are, maybe not sexually, but at least they're honest about it. I'm like kind of two-faced, and I'm like trying to hide it, all the hypocrisy and gossip that most humans are guilty of. And I think the last thing is the power of marriage and sex is so powerful. It's used as a metaphor throughout the Bible. So Hosea, there's a movie out now that's what it's kind of a copy of. Is of course, Hosea is the godly man. He's got a wife that's a prostitute that runs astray, and God says, go and get her. Jesus is portrayed as the bridegroom. The church is portrayed as the bride. When Israel goes after other gods, God accuses them of prostituting themselves out. And so the power of this imagery, when there's a turn, when there is a conversion with somebody who's practicing this thing, it's a reminder to all of us that nothing is too far gone. And so I just think it resonates, and it's not that comfortable to talk about. It's kind of awkward, but there's a power in that character, in that trope, and I think it's there because it's true and because there's something to learn. And so that's why I think it keeps on coming up, is mankind is figured out, and God knows that we can learn from this type of character. And so today that's what we want to do.
Yeah. And really trying to find that balance between that sinful life where you say, you know what, there's no way I'm going to be good, so I'm going to be as good as I can at being bad. Yeah. And then the flip side is, well, I'm going to try to be perfect in every way, and I'll never let anybody see, the chink in my armor. And so that's not the way to live either. And so we have this interesting story of Rahab, how God is going to select her and use her for blessings to come through in just a huge way. And one of the things I'm seeing, it's all throughout Joshua, but especially in chapter 2, well, and 1 as well. But what we're seeing, God says, I can do great things through I can do great things through small acts and marginalized people. I mean, he uses Joshua after Moses was the one who had led them. And one of the things that's interesting, we probably won't spend too much time talking about, but how many spies are sent across over the Jordan and end up with Rahab? 2 of them, right? If you think back to, I think it's like Deuteronomy 1, how many spies does Moses select?
10.
Yeah.
Or 12.
12.
Yeah.
He sends 12.
10 are unfaithful.
Yeah. And so there's a couple things. One, we have to remember that following Jesus is not about the majority or the popular vote. And I know this is a dicey subject and I don't want to dive too deep into it, but according to Joshua, and for those who read this story, having a few faithful people is way better than having a few faithful people and a lot who are unfaithful. Because 2 said, Joshua and Caleb said, man, we can take this land. God can give it to us. And the other 10 said, no, we can't. And now Joshua's like, he learned that lesson. He's like, I'm just sending 2. Yeah. That we don't have to have this great majority. God can do big things through these small acts. Yeah. And that is the story of Rahab. So I shared too much.
Yeah.
So why don't you take up?
Well, we'll just kind of tell the story. So we're in Joshua 2. So Joshua is going to secretly send 2 spies from a town that we all blush when we have to say Shittim. And he says, go look over the land, especially Jericho. And it says, so they went and they entered the house, and you get the word prostitute before you get her name. And so I preached this before, but I say label stick. And so it says a prostitute named Rahab and stayed there. And so when Rahab gets mentioned 2 more times in the New Testament, so there's the genealogy in Matthew 1:5, but then in Hebrews 11 and then in James 2, she gets mentioned again. And her job description is almost part of her title. Mm-hmm. Why would James and the Hebrews author choose to do that?
Well, again, like we talked about before, is like it's a reminder that, what's important about Rahab was not her occupation; it was about her faith. I mean, she's listed among those who are faithful, and
there's
everybody
only 2
else.
women in there, Sarah and Rahab,
and the others, and the others listed in Hebrews, by faith, list over and over again. I mean, they all have tainted pasts as well.
I was going to say that.
So, I mean, they're not going to single her out as being the one terrible person. They're going to say, look, it's her faith that was so important. And man, I mean, we could sit here and preach this for the rest of the time. Like, for those of you who are like, give all these reasons why God can or won't use you. I mean, he selected a prostitute and they didn't hide from it. They didn't say, she was this great. No, this is who she was. But man, that's who God chose to use.
Yeah. What I've said before is the authors put that in there not so you'll think less of Rahab, but so that you'll think more of God.
Yeah. And
what God is able to do.
Well, and I would even say I think more of her because like she's like pardon the expression, but she is the phoenix that rose out of the ashes.
Yeah, she really is.
Like, I mean, she could have said, I'm just a useless harlot, I have no role here, or but instead she chose to leave her circumstances.
Yeah.
And protect her family doing it. Spoiler. Sorry.
So by verse 2, the king of Jericho knows the spies are there and where they're from and what they're doing. These are faithful men. As far as we can tell, they're very faithful, godly men. They're not good spies.
I know. Like, I don't know how bad they are that they can't fit in, but I don't get it because, like, it's very specific. Not only does the king learn that they're spies, he learns how many of them there are and where they're staying.
That they're Israelites. I mean, he knows
they're terrible.
Everything. So
it's like Chevy Chase and Dan Aykroyd.
Yeah. Spies like us.
Yes.
Yeah, that's funny. And so they go knock on the door. They say, bring the men out that entered your house. They're here to spy the land out. And the first thing that Rahab does in verse 4, so the first time that she speaks, she starts lying.
Yes.
She says, yeah, the men were here, but they went that way.
Yeah.
Hurry up and go get them.
Yeah.
And she kind of baits them into leaving quickly and sends them out to go look. And so a lot of ink has been spilled about the, I guess, the morality of her lying. Do you have any thoughts on that?
No, I don't know that I want. What do I say about that? Is,
I guess you go through the arguments.
Yeah.
That, like, she's afraid, it's a time of war, she's a pagan, she's unsaved. I mean,
we can try to justify it, but I don't think that it would have been more honorable for her to say, "Here, I'm turning over these people." She was willing to risk her life and her family's life for these guys.
yeah, the translators that tried to make her a hotel manager, I think, are the same ones that try to justify the line.
Yeah.
And I think once you go down that route, it's pretty dangerous. I think you're better just to jump in and just say, no, she lied.
Yeah.
And leave it at that.
The spies weren't completely telling the truth, or maybe they did. Maybe that's why they got caught so easily.
Yeah.
But okay, I want to talk about this, Lance, because this is something I hadn't thought about a whole lot. But as I was reading back through this, notice the timeline. Like, it's actually kind of out of order is what you think would happen. You would think that somehow the bartering to save her life would come first, but it doesn't. Before that, we have her. When she lies, the moment she lies, she is risking her own life and her family's life.
She doesn't have a deal yet.
Exactly. If she turns him over, she is a hero, right? If she doesn't turn him over and somebody finds out, like, she's dead in a horrible, terrible way, and so is the rest of her family.
Yeah, because she's essentially a traitor.
Yeah.
In her people's eyes.
Yeah, but she is the ink the ink is not dried. It hasn't even been written. They haven't come to an agreement that she's going to be saved. She risks herself before they say, "Yeah, we'll save you."
A Canaanite prostitute shows grace to the people of God before they get a chance to.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. I don't think I thought about that.
And then there's one more thing that happens even before that. How I read it, even before the knock comes at the door, it sounds like she has already hidden them, right?
Yeah.
Because they come to the door and she's like, I've sent them away. And then it says, yeah, she had hidden them up on the roof.
Yeah, with the flags.
Yeah, and so, like, it's just really interesting how that whole thing played out. But I like you said it much better than I could have, that we have this lying, unfaithful Canaanite prostitute who offers grace. And maybe that says a little bit about, for those of us who have been through difficult times and we recognize our failures and our shortcomings, maybe it's easier to offer grace as a prostitute than as a priest. I hate to say that, but
man, I'm watching Chosen right now, and man, they really bring that out in those Pharisees.
yes,
In the Chosen,
they do.
And you brought up that she shows kindness. Her lineage includes Ruth, and a big part of the book of Ruth is chesed. It's like kindness.
Yeah.
And it's just interesting to trace that back to Rahab.
Yeah, because she's going to be the great.
We gotta save this.
Okay, we'll save it. Okay, I'll save it.
All right.
Because you don't know.
And so the first time that she speaks, she lies. But the second time that she speaks, she starts speaking truth. And she says, I know that the Lord, and I pointed this out before, but that's capital O, capital L, capital O, capital R, capital D, which is like Yahweh or Jehovah, depending upon your Bible translation, which is like God's like personal name. How does she know?
That's what I
She's
put
a
there too.
Canaanite
Like,
prostitute.
that's exactly what. How does she know this?
And then she's going to use the word fear 3 times.
Yes.
And so her motivation, I think we can safely say, is fear. That, like, she knows this God. She knows the story of Sihon and Og. She knows the story of the Red Sea. She knows about some of their battles. And she knows that everyone's heart is melted in fear and everyone's courage has failed because of you. For again, the Lord your God is God in heaven and on earth below. And so she theologically is pretty sound.
Yeah.
So she knows this God is powerful. What she needs to find out is, but is this God merciful?
Yes. Is this God for me?
Yeah.
Will he take me? You know, one of the words that we've mulled over in our house a lot the last several weeks, because we had a joke that came up, and then somebody said, well, that's ironic. And so we've tried to go through what is ironic. This just is filled with irony that the Canaanite, the prostitute woman living in Canaan, is more aware and more convinced and more fearful of God and his power. And she seems to remember with more clarity and conviction of the God who parted the Red Sea and the God who's going to give the land over than the Israelites who've been eating manna and quail from heaven and following a pillar of fire and cloud. I think it's just, that to me, it's so ironic that she seems to have so much greater faith in God than most of the Israelites do.
I think that when you're on the good side of a promise, it's really easy to doubt it's going to come true.
Yeah.
And when you're on the bad side of a promise, that pessimist part of you is like, oh no, it's totally going to happen. Yeah. And so in this scenario, the Israelites are on the good side of the promise, and those are so easy to doubt because sometimes they take time. But when you're on the bad side of the promise, like, no, that'll happen. Yeah. And so I think we believe threats that are made against us more than we believe in blessings that are bestowed upon us. And so is fear a healthy place to start?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
How come we don't preach it from the pulpit more? I said we.
Yeah. I agree. I agree, because it does make us very uncomfortable and feel a little icky, and so
yeah,
we don't want to always. But man, that is a great place to start. Not a place to live. You don't need to pitch your tent there, but you need to cross through that valley.
I'm so glad that you gave it that balance. Yeah. Because I do think it's healthy to start from like a place. I mean, the Bible says so, yeah. Right? The beginning of wisdom is what? Fear of the Lord. And so she does that, and by verse 12, she's begging for mercy. She's like, I know you're powerful. I know he's going to do this. And she says, now then, please swear to me by the Lord that you will show hesed to my family, kindness, because I have shown hesed to you. Give me a sure sign that you'll spare my life and the life of my family, and that you'll save us from death. And so she wants a sign. Yeah. What do we draw from that?
Well, I think it's important for us to remember that, again, I mentioned this earlier, that before she even asked for this sign, she has already done something to risk her life for the rest of them. Yeah. To keep them safe. But I think that's human nature, but I also think she's being wise to say, you know what, I want to know that, again, that this God who protects you is going to be a God that protects me. So that's probably not the answer you're looking for, but that's the best one I got.
I just think she's such an interesting, flawed character that has so much insight. And that's one of the tropes about the prostitute with a heart of gold, is they have advice and insight that other people don't. Yeah. And so we see this playing out here. Yeah. So I don't know. I didn't really have a thought about it. And so the men agreed to the deal, our lives for your lives. If you don't tell what we're doing, and so again, this is a contract, okay? We will treat you kindly and faithfully when the Lord gives us the land. So they've been given the promise, but it's almost like now they're parroting her. It's like their faith is being built up. Yes. Right? It's
I noticed that language too.
Yeah, it's so cool. And so then there is the famous rope.
Yeah.
And possibly that's a product that involved the flax that's on the roof.
Yes.
And that it famously, and now it doesn't say that the rope here is red. Man, I hope it is. I hope it's literally the same cord that gets used later on. Yeah. And so she sneaks them out the wall, and she tells them to go hide. They go hide for 3 days. We talked about that last week. It's kind of interesting. And they go hide.
Yes. A couple of things I do want to point out. I just think it's also so beautiful that it wasn't just about herself. She was also wanting her family to be saved as well. And she had a bigger part in her own and their salvation than what you might think. I mean, she still had the responsibility to put that rope out. It was still on her. And they said, look, if you don't put that out, like, we're free from that. Like we're no longer obligated to protect you. You have to have that out. And so it was her responsibility. And I just think about, I don't know how the rest of her family thought. I don't know what they thought about her. I don't know what they would have thought about, one, her harboring spies, two, her belief that there's a group of people out there who have a God that's just about to destroy their city, and then three, that she says, hey, come and stay with me. I mean, she might have had to convince them, like, hey, I do believe in this God, and I believe that the only way you're going to find protection is coming to stay with me. And I wonder how that conversation would have played out as she goes to her brother's house and she goes to her parents' house and says, hey, you guys need to come in with me.
Because the stereotype is you end up in that line of work because you don't have a good rapport with your family.
Yeah.
And so the fact that they're willing to believe her and move in there. So tell them what Robert Morgan says about her line of work.
Well,
we talked about this.
We did. He kind of said out there, I mean, it's one of his openings. He says, prostitution in Jericho was probably considered as honorable as an honorable enterprise. I don't know where he came up with that. And we talked a little bit about this. And I did say, well, a lot of times for prostitution, it was somewhat sexual, but it also was religious in nature, that people were involved in prostitution sometimes because they connected, fertility and the worship of gods to that. But also, in addition to that, I just lost my train of thought completely.
About it being honorable.
Yeah. The other thing, and when we were talking about this, is that they were in pretty bad shape. Sin-wise, I mean, God had withheld his judgment on them for centuries. I think 400 years. And so it is safe to say that it was a wicked and depraved generation. I mean, you can go back to Noah, and all the people's thoughts were on evil all the time. I mean, it almost sounds like, as much as you could look at this and say, wow, God is cleaning house on these good, wholesome people, like the only faithful person he could find in Canaan was, or at least in Jericho, was, a prostitute. I don't know that I would say it was honorable, but I don't know that it had the stigmatism maybe that it has now.
I think that's pretty safe thing to say. And so they tell her to tie this scarlet cord in your window. And by verse 21, we find out that she does it immediately.
Yes, that's so interesting too. I noticed that. I don't think I've noticed that before. It's like, bam, it was like right there. I'm not waiting.
She tells him to go hide for 3 days, and yet she ties it right away. And I think it's so tempting for us to say, okay, so windows a lot of times in the Bible are seen as like your witness to the world. So like Daniel's praying in front of his window, those types of things. And so it would be easy for her to say, okay, I'm going to disgrace this Hebrew God if I tie this cord in my window now. I know those guys are going to go and hide for 3 days for a fact. Yeah. And then they end up marching around the city. Okay, yeah. What is it? Or it's once a day for 6 days and 7 times on the 7th day. Yeah, so all right. 13. And so she's got a solid week and a half before she needs to do this. Yeah. And she can rationalize why she shouldn't tie this up right now. And I think we rationalize like, okay, I can't go public with my faith yet because, it could be as extreme as I'm a Canaanite prostitute and a well-known liar, right? And yet all of those things are true about her, yet she has faith. And she wants to obey what she was told to do. And so she doesn't wait. And I think there's such an example there of like, whatever faith you have, tie it around your window. Like let people know, even the people you think are together aren't, and people that are sharing their faith, they still have sin, right? Don't wait to do that. She doesn't wait. She ties it right away.
Yeah, and this is where I'm just gonna say something really nice about you, and I don't like doing that. especially to your face, and certainly not in front of a lot of people. But you preached a couple weeks ago, and you shared something that I thought was deeply profound and beautiful, and I actually think you should continue to find a way to allow this to be shown to other people. You were talking about, like, when do you start over? And you were talking about you can tie a knot on a rope at any place. Is that right?
Yeah.
Tell what exactly was your line?
Well, the idea is from Viktor Frankl, where he's like, at the end of your life, everybody is going to wish that they had a second chance. And the metaphor that I used is just, if your life is a rope, just tie a knot right now and say, okay, this is my second chance. Whatever I wish I had done previously in my life, I wish I'd loved more, I'd been kinder, I'd been more patient, forgiven people. Whatever you wish that you had done, if you could go back and do it again, you just tie a knot right now and say, okay, this is my second chance. I'm going to live that way now.
Rahab is both figuratively and literally tying the knot right now. Yeah. And the spies are still hiding out. I mean, they're out in the mountains. They haven't gone back. They haven't gone around. God hasn't shown his faithfulness to her yet. But she says, I think she immediately puts that out and says, like, right now, today is the day that my life is completely changed, regardless of what I've seen God do in my life, regardless of whether or not these guys are going to keep their promise. Like, I'm changing my life now. And I think that's really powerful. I think she ties the knot right then.
Well, and so much of walking with God is holding in your hand the now and the not yet. Yes. Right? God gives so many promises to Abraham, right? It's like he's in covenant with God now, but a lot of those promises are not yet. Yeah. And so Rahab is in covenant with God's people. As soon as she ties the cord, she's in covenant, but the deliverance is still a not yet. Yeah. And sanctification is a now and not yet. I'm sanctified. I'm forgiven. God looks down and sees his son, Jesus' blood, covering me. But my sanctification is still a ongoing process. And so that simple red cord, her tying it right away, is like, I'm in covenant now, but those blessings are still a not yet. But I have them. They're good because they're from God. Yeah. It's the now and the not yet.
Yeah. So my takeaway from this is, I said we need to figure out, maybe you get the youth group and turn the basement into the sweatshop, get a bunch of paracord and tie a knot in it, turn it into a necklace. And when somebody says, why are you wearing a piece of rope with a knot around it, and say, this is the fact. I've chosen to follow Jesus, and I'm tying my knot.
I'm living my second chance right now.
This is my second chance.
Yes. And we totally should make them red.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
And we can include the story of Rahab in it, even better.
There you go.
All right.
And so she ties it. We've kind of alluded to the story. They march around the city. What is that, 13 times total?
Yes.
Okay, good. I'm not as good at math as you.
6 plus 7.
Okay.
One.
Yeah, and so I read a commentator that said that, like, they probably could see the red cord as they were marching around the city. Yeah. And, like, she doesn't know that they're doing it for 7 days. I'm not sure that they know that they're going to do it 7 days. And so just that anxiety, like, is today the day? Like, is the promise good? Is it going to hold? Yeah. Just that tension and just that building. And so they sack the city. They burn everything. The only thing that's spared in the city is Rahab and her family. And then Joshua 6, verse 25 says, and Rahab lives among the Israelites to this day.
Yeah. Just a great story. And now we get to tell them and we all know this, but to me it's just such a huge reminder of how God uses broken things and broken lives and people with battered pasts. He uses Rahab in such a powerful way. She's ultimately, through her lineage, is going to be Boaz. It's going to be Obed.
I'll do it.
It's going to be Jesse.
No,
I skipped the one.
You forgot Salmon.
Yes, she married
Salmon. I can't.
She
say
married
Hebrew
Salmon.
names.
Yeah,
Is it like Salmon?
Oh, I have no idea.
Salmon?
I don't know Hebrew.
Yeah. So who people want to believe is one of the spies.
Yeah.
People want to believe that. That's like out there.
Yes.
Yeah. And so she marries a good Hebrew boy from the tribe of Judah, which
Yes.
right there should get your attention.
Yeah.
And then, like I said, Boaz,
Yes.
who takes in a immigrant
Yes.
Gentile woman who is very vulnerable, and so being in the lineage of a prostitute that would not have been treated well by men, Boaz has a chance to take advantage of Ruth, and he is such a gentleman and such a godly man.
Yes.
That, like, it's like all that pain that Rahab endured, it's like it was processed and passed on as health to Boaz.
Yes.
And like, don't miss that, okay? If you have trauma or pain or hurt or things in your life, like you can process those things. God can heal those things, and they can be passed on as health.
Yes.
And so you see that in Boaz. It gives me goosebumps. I love that story. And so Boaz and Ruth are, again, as you said, they have Obed. Obed has Jesse. Jesse has David. And then from David, we get to who?
David.
You don't have to do the whole thing.
No.
We get to King Jesus.
Oh, we get to, I was like,
Yeah.
okay, I could get from the, I could get from Rahab to David, but it would be tough for me to make it all the way. But
No.
ultimately, it's going to get to Jesus. One of the things I do want to point this out, I was just thinking about this. Romans chapter 5 says, not only so, but we also glory in our sufferings, because we know that our suffering produces perseverance, perseverance character, and character hope. And then it goes on to say, and hope does not disappoint. And that is just, you could just draw that out in Rahab's life. And I love how you showed the fact that maybe one of the reasons why Boaz was so kind was because he grew up with those stories of a God who offers forgiveness and grace and mercy, and we should treat other people in the same way. So yeah, and hope does not disappoint. So ultimately, that's going to lead us to Jesus, and Jesus does not disappoint. We have that hope in Him. So,
all right. Any takeaways? Final thoughts? We told the story.
We have told the story. Again, just remember wherever you are in your life. I don't think anybody would have scripted, hey, who's going to be the person that's going to save Israel. I don't think anybody said, hey, let's get this foreigner. She's a woman. She's a prostitute. She's perfect. And God says, this is the one. And so I just want, in your life, I want you to know that even those little small things, and this is going back to the very beginning, Lance, when we were talking, those small things make a big difference. And Morgan talks about this as these little ripples, these little acts of faithfulness can really do so much. And so just by the fact that she was willing to allow these men in the house and not give them away, through her, ultimately, we have David and Jesus. She was a part of that. And it's that little thing. So it looks like you have...
I brought a couple of symbols.
Okay.
That obviously are... Here, I'm going to scoot this over just a little bit. That obviously are part of the story. And that's this brick. It's solid. It's heavy. It's thick. When there are many of these, they can entrap us. They can feel like it's something that we could never overcome. And yet, that brick wall was knocked down. But the scarlet rope, and I couldn't find a red rope, I know, but I found a cord. This thing found a way out. And the walls end up getting knocked down by God, but the salvation that was given through that red cord, and the early church and lots of commentators have latched on to that red cord as being like the red blood of Jesus, the red cord of blood that flows from the garden through Passover to the very cross of Jesus.
Yes.
And how like that endures. So this seems like it's stronger. It seems like it's going to last for longer, but really it's that red cord. Yeah. And so see walls is something that God is capable of knocking down, and just know that red cord is always there, and that is a hope that we can trust on.
Yeah. You can see enemies. You can see walls. You can see past sin and failures, prostitution, and God says, but let me show you something greater. This the red cord, the blood of my son, breaks down walls and allows us to have a relationship with him.
Yeah, and it's interesting that the text never jumps on that red cord as being powerful, but Christians ever since the close of the canon have.
Yes.
And so the early church would talk a lot about the red cord.
Yeah.
All right. So announcements?
Yes, I have some announcements. If you'll bear with me, we still have a lot of folks that we just ask that you please be in prayer for. First off, we have Kay Corbett. She is Jody Norman's sister-in-law. She's very ill, and so we want to ask that you be in prayer for Kay Corbett. Lyndon Blackman has had his surgery. He's at home. He's doing well. Just prayed for continued healing for him, strength for him, and patience and sanity for Frida as she's taking care of him. Also, Michael Cheney, he was in the hospital. He got out. He went back in. He's back out again. Just ask that you remember him. He's still having a difficult time. Doesn't have a lot of strength, and so please be in prayer for that. Of course, Brandon Tanner was back with us. He had been in the hospital. He's back home, and so those are already 3 stories of praise as well. Also for Sam Abney, he seems to be doing better. He's had that fitted for that vest that's going to help keep his heart in rhythm in the event it gets out. So that's also good news, but please continue to be in prayer for him. Also, Julie Smith is not doing well. I ask that you please keep her in your prayers. Rocky Mays at home. He's continuing to recuperate. Lee Mitchell, I actually haven't talked to Lee since Sunday, since we got that text, but hopefully he's still doing well. Do you have an update on him?
Melissa's the one that has.
Well, the Lee Mitchell family. And Nora.
Yeah, they're doing good.
Okay, so, but we're still praying for you guys. So Lee, take care of Melissa. I know usually it's the wives are doing a good job taking care of us, and so you get to bear that burden. Also, want to ask that you remember Emilio Franco. He's a friend of some of our members. He has cancer, and so we're going to ask that you remember him. And then also the Hooks family. They have
one with COVID, and
yes,
the rest of the kids are on quarantine.
Yes, and so that family is always blowing and going, and so for them to have to hit the brakes is going to be a little crazy for them, and so just remember them in your prayers. And then also David McMaster had asked for prayers for some upcoming decisions that he needs to make and for guidance, and so I want to spend just a few minutes praying for these folks and ask that you will join me as we lift their names up to the Lord. Father God, you know the situations that we've mentioned. You're aware of them. We're not informing you of anything that you didn't already know. But Lord, we want to ask that you work in powerful ways and that you work in us in powerful ways so that we can minister to those people, that we can show kindness to those people, that we can show hospitality to those. And so we can be reminded that you're a God who hears our prayers and works in powerful ways, even ways that we don't fully understand or even recognize. And so for all the names that we have listed, Lord, I just pray that you be with them and help them to find peace and comfort and strength, but most importantly, that they'll find you in their time of need. God, I thank you again for being a good God. I thank you for all the names that we mentioned that are prayers of praise. When those healings happen, when the recovery takes place, we just want to give you all the glory. God, lastly, I just want to thank you again for being a God who looks down and sees us as broken people and believes not only that we are worth saving, but that you would allow us to be a part of that through your Son, Jesus Christ. And so, Lord, as we find ourselves maybe walled in with broken pasts and stereotypes and struggles that we have, please let us be reminded that you have offered us that rope of salvation through your Son, Jesus. May we always cling to him and look to him. Thank you again for all you've done for us. It's in Jesus' name I pray.